G'day everybody, welcome back to the channel. Okay, so this is part 2 of our discussion, my review on the Kirmuss Record Restoration System, which you can see here beside me. There's no script here, I haven't prepared anything. I am just going to talk to you about my experience with the machine and the process that you go through to restore a record when you use this system. I'll refer a little bit backwards and forwards to part 1, and I will link part 1 to this video if you haven't seen it already, which explains, and you see Charles himself here in my house going through the process of restoring a record with his system. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is that unfortunately we picked a record, any record, a random record. Charles just said, let's get something that's dirty and restore that record and we'll see what happens. So all of that record was also done on the fly. As far as what we got was what we got. It was later on that we realized that I was going to get a copyright strike if we left the audio in that video play. So I simply did a quick edit, deleted the audio at the correct time and spoke over the top of it essentially. Now I did block some of the stuff that Charles was saying, but I was obviously present in the room, and I think I summarized his thoughts and what we could see on the spectrum analyzer pretty well. So where that bottle was on the needle cleaning bottle was, what I wanted to explain in this video was that when we set that up, the very tips of the peaks were at the very top edge of that bottle. So what we saw in the later video where we were playing the record after it had been restored was quite a lot more dynamic range, or quite a lot more frequencies were ahead and above that bottle. And that was pretty clear to see. And in the room, you could really tell that without touching the volume, without doing anything, because we did not touch the system. I was in the room. I can assure you everything was left as it was from when we first played the record and we set the bottle up on the very tips of the spectrum analyzer output. There was a noticeable increase in volume in this room. Charles referred to it and I did in the overdub, but it was clearly evident that we had more dynamic range, we had more volume in the room without touching the volume control. A few other things that were worth noting here as well in that video, which is again I will refer to, was the surface noise reduction in sound. There was a lot less pops, clicks, and surface noise. Now look, this is going to depend and vary depending on your system. The only, I guess, downside to analog as opposed to digital is if you press play, you get what's coming down the stream, and if all the links in your chain on your digital playback are as you want them to be, you're going to get a desired sound from your system. Analog's a little different because there's so many variables. There is, all the alignment issues that come with setting a cartridge up properly. We have a reference, which was my setup on my Kirmuss Star BR with my 4.11 inch arm. I set the cartridge up on that tone arm according to the Frank Kirmuss way of doing things, and I've been very happy with how that sounds. I'm hoping to do some comparison videos into the future with some other setup systems. So hopefully that will come to pass in the next few months, and we'll talk about that when that or if that takes place. I'm negotiating with a few people at the moment to get their systems in here to do some different setups. So we'll hopefully be able to do that. I'll be able to give you my honest opinion about what I think is the ultimate way of setting a cartridge up on the end of a tone arm on a setup like mine. So further to that, there was definitely an increase in the sound across the the frequencies in the spectrum. There were definitely an increase in output from the cartridge, and there was a decrease in the surface noise, pops, clicks, and what have you. Now, this system isn't going to take everything out of your old records. It's just not. There's no way for me to tell you that you're going to go from a pretty average sounding record with a lot of surface noise and a lot of pops and clicks to a record that sounds, nearly like a brand new one. It's just not the way it works. It's just not possible to do that. But I did observe with this system when Charles was here, and for the probably 100 records that I have restored with this system since I've had it, is an improvement across those areas I just spoke about. And the improvement varies. Some records really restored beautifully, and I got a really, really big improvement in dynamic range, in second and third order harmonic, timbre, the stuff that really, really, really makes a record sound alive and sound real. And then there were other records where I got maybe a 3 to 5% improvement across the record. So there were definitely some varying results in the restoration of some of the records that I put through the system. One of the other things that I wanted to say, potentially you may see this as a negative, but I wouldn't see it that way myself. In my former life, I restored high-end motor vehicles. And when restoring a high-end motor vehicle, I used to say to my apprentices, there's no such thing as a quick, good restoration. And the same thing applies here. You are going to need to spend around, on average, I think, about half an hour on restoring one record. There are several steps and processes you need to go through with this system by putting the ionizing fluid on and then ultrasonically getting that ionizing fluid off. And of course, when you put the record back into the water of the ultrasonic, you change the charge back to something that repels water. So that's the process and the reason why you've got to continue to take the record out, put another application of the ionizing fluid on the record to change the charge, to allow the ultrasonic to get into the groove and remove that gunk, the plasticizer, the outgassing, the oil that's sitting on the surface of a record, your fingerprints, dirt, dust, all the things, the contaminants, mold, all the things that build up on a record over many, many years. Now, this system does it. I will say that very, very clearly and honestly. This system removes that stuff. I saw in the bottom of the tank of this system, every single time I've done a run of, say, 20 records, a lot of rubbish in the bottom of the tank. A lot of rubbish. Now, that rubbish is coming out of the record. There's nowhere else it could be. We are putting purified water into this system, and after it's degassed, you look at the bath, and it is spotless. But after 20 records or 15 records or 25 records, whatever I happen to do over the process of a day or two, that is not the case. The water has a layer of silt almost, a layer of gunk, rubbish, all manner of little black dots of things and gunk that's sitting in the bottom of the bath of this ultrasonic. Well, that's all coming from somewhere, folks. And it's coming out of the records that we are ultrasonically cleaning. But there's an investment in time. There's no doubt about that. You're going to have to put the hours in, the time in to do this, and you will be rewarded with a clean record at the end of it. A restored record, as Charles says. And I agree with him. I've seen constant improvements in my records across all of my records, but in varying degrees thereof. So It really is one of those things where you will do half an hour of work on a record and you might get a 4 or 5% improvement in that record, or you'll do the same half an hour of restoration work on another record and you'll see a 20 to 30% increase in the way that record sounds. There was some really old, nasty records I had that I put through this system that I would have said their coherency, their ability to be able to hear into what was going on in the groove jumped by 30 to 40% even in some records. So it's a worthwhile process, but it is not a process where you are going to go, bang, drop your record in, push a button and walk away. I'm sorry, folks, this is not your system if that's what you wish to do. You are going to need to be here at the machine. You are going to need to do the process. It is hands-on. But, as I used to say to my students, and as I was told by my teachers in the car restoration game, there's no such thing as a quick, good restoration. They don't exist. The time spent to restore the record will pay dividends. The other thing about this system too, and the process, is that you do this system once. Once you've done this, and you put the record into a correct sleeve that isn't going to outgas and put more stuff on the record, you get a record that is restored, and once it's cleaned and dusted, and there's a process that Charles spoke about in part 1 of this video, where you get into a habit of, cleaning a record with the dust off the record with the brush, cleaning the stylus on your cartridge. Those are processes that you just get into a habit of doing, and by doing that you continue to keep that record clean. And that is part of the, I guess, love of analog that we have. And it's a lovely process, I think. I enjoy the process of putting a record on and cleaning the record and putting the needle on the record and sitting back and enjoying. Some of you are digital freaks, and I am a digital freak as well, where it's just literally on your iPad and you move through tracks. But the art of listening to an album comes from the analog domain. When we bought a record back in the day, before digital was a thing, we put the record on, we moved the stylus over, we put the needle on the record at track 1, and we listened. We listened to the story the artist was telling us from track 1 through to the dead wax. We turned the record over, we start at the beginning of the record on side B, and we listen to the story the artist tells us through to the dead wax on side B. There is a sense of full commitment into the record that we just bought. And I think that's lost in the digital cut and thrust these days. We're all in a hurry. We all want to do everything. We want to get everything done in one day. And I think we've lost the art of sitting down, breathing, slowing down, and enjoying what the artist is trying to portray in words and music, melody. That process is slowed right down when you listen to analog. That process is sabotaged, if you like, with a tablet in front of us, because we get about 20 seconds into a track. No, next one, next one. We've got this, and what that's doing, I think, to us is it's shortening our attention span. It is stopping us from committing to anything in life for that matter, but certainly from an audiophile standpoint, committing to the record we just purchased that we want to hear from start to finish. That process is much more likely to happen listening to a record than it is streaming a track on a streaming service. So I think this system is work. There's no doubt about it. It takes time to do this. It is not a set and forget process. But the results, if you are prepared to put the time in, are absolutely worth the price of admission. So it's a thumbs up from me. Charles did manage to signed my machine for me here, personalising it a little bit for me. Now, Charles and I are friends. I'll say that, I'll own that right now. But I told Charles that when I review the system and I go through this part 2, my words are my own. I'm not going to fudge what I've got to say about this system or any other review that I do for that matter. What you will hear from me is my truth about my experience. And friends or not friends, that's my process. That's what you get here on an Aussie Audiophile. That's what you will always get here. So this system is certainly of benefit to your music collection in vinyl. But it is time. It will take you time to go through the process. Now, maybe this is not for everybody. Maybe if you are a casual listener and you've got 50 or 80 or 100 records or something, you might not think the investment in this machine is worthwhile. That's for you to decide. I can't make that decision for you. I have a reasonable analog vinyl collection, and I absolutely think that this system is worth my money to go through and restore my records. And probably you'll start at your beloved, most favourite records, and you will move your way. Which is what I did. I picked all my favourite, records. I restored those first, and then I went through down to the less played records. And sometimes you will just put a record in this machine and give it a 2-minute ultrasonic cycle and then pull it out. And that will clean some of the surface contaminants off the record. You will not clean into the groove efficiently by doing that. You need to do the process to do that. But this machine's built like a Sherman tank as well. It is a very, very, very strong machine. It is a true ultrasonic, and that's the other thing that needs to be mentioned here as well. This machine, one of the other, I guess, downsides to this machine is, I think, is that on a warm ambient day when you're going through and restoring your records, this machine will heat the water up in the bath. A lot of other so-called ultrasonics will clean 15, 20 records, no problems, continuously. This machine will not do that. Sorry to say. It has a rather large capacity bath in it, which you put your distilled water in. But a true ultrasonic through cavitation will excite the water. It will warm the water up. And you might get, on a warm ambient day, I was getting maybe 2 to 3 records through this machine, and then I was having to pull the cover off, do a degas, and go away for 20 minutes, half an hour, and come back. Because it was warming the water up to a point where it was getting to a point where you didn't dare go any further. Now, you can drain some water out of this machine and top it up with some more distilled water if you want to continue that process. There are ways around this, and it's all explained in the Kirmuss website, where you can go through that process as well. But it is another thing that you have to understand. True ultrasonics through cavitation will excite the water. They will warm the water up. And you will need to do one of two things. You will either have to go away and take some time to allow the water in the machine to normalize in its temperature, or you just simply flip the switch over here and drain some water out of there and replace it with some already cooled water. And you can keep cycling water through this machine like that. There are processes, there are ways, plenty of ways to skin a cat, as they say. And that's another part of this process that you'll need to understand. You will need to realize that a true ultrasonic will do that. These other so-called ultrasonics that just never get the water, barely above, ambient room temperature could not simply be working as a true ultrasonic, because they're just not exciting the water. They are just not creating the temperature. So there's alarms and bells and whistles and all kinds of things here letting you know when you get to that point to stop. Charles has gone through that process in part 1. I won't go back over it again. it's a system where you've got to be there and you've got to watch what's going on when you're putting the ionizing fluid on the record. You need to see what's coming up out of the record. The record will talk to you, as Charles says, and that is absolutely correct. The record will tell you when it's clean, and it works. The system works. It gets a total thumbs up from me. It does the job it says it's going to do. There are very few systems that I've come across that actually do properly restore or clean a record deeply. This is one of them. And I'm happy to say that I purchased this with my own money too, by the way. I've had this for about 12 months now. And it's taken me a long time to put this review together because I want to understand exactly what's been happening with my records and how this machine works. And I wanted to have this machine in the field working. Now, this machine went up to the Melbourne Hi-Fi show, and Charles continued to work with this machine, this very machine, in his demonstrations for the whole weekend. It is bulletproof. It just keeps on keeping on. You can put your glasses in this machine after you've done and suspend them in the bath after you've done your records, and it's a true ultrasonic. It cleans jewelry. It really does do the job it says it's going to do. And that's record cleaning, but it also, I found out, doubles as a very, very good ultrasonic cleaner with a lot of other things as well. So, yeah, look, totally unscripted. I'm talking to you as it's coming out from my head into my mouth. But that's what you get here on this channel. You just get me talking my thoughts. So it's a thumbs up. I like it. I think it's a good system. I don't mind the time invested in getting a record restored and sounding its absolute best. This is one of the very few machines out there that will allow that to happen. So that's probably it, folks. I think leave any questions you might have in the comments below this video. I will link this video to part 1, so you can watch that process of Charles doing the restoration process himself here in my house, and we listened here on my system to the restored record, and it was a substantial improvement in that record from when we first listened to it. So it works. It's a system that actually does what it sets out to do. Very few, I think, out there can stake that claim. So anyway, thanks very much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Until we talk again, it's bye for now.